Hello, my name is Deirdre McElroy. I teach hand quilting and hand applique classes around the world, and I'm the author of a book and video series called That Perfect Stitch. Many years ago, my mother, Roxanne, and I set about to design a thimble that we intended to be the most state-of-the-art tool available to quilters today. So here is the Roxanne Thimble. We designed it so that you could push from correct angles of your finger and be orthopedically correct, which reduces stress on your joints, which will relieve pain if you have arthritis or hopefully prevent you from causing arthritis. The dimples will help you control your needle to the very best degree possible for the very finest, fastest stitches possible. And the thimble is designed to last a lifetime. The thimble is very much like a prosthetic device. You can't just try one on and hope that that's what's comfortable and works. There are many different sizes of thimbles. So we've given you a set of instructions on how to fit correctly, and these are in written format as well as this little video companion to those written instructions. The written instructions can be downloaded at www.colonialneedle.com, or we can mail or email them to you upon request. So let's go through the process of how to measure your finger in order to determine what size Roxanne thimble you should order. Some of the things that you're going to need are a ruler with millimeter measurements on one side, a pen, possibly a piece of string, and ring sizers. If you don't own a pair of ring sizers, we can mail you an inexpensive plastic pair, or you can just go to your local jeweler and ask to borrow his. I know that can be embarrassing for some people, but we've been asking people to do this for about 15 years, and they all report back that the jeweler is actually fascinated with the process and just really happy to have somebody in his business, because he knows now, next time you're looking at some jewelry, you might think of him for your purchase. So the very first step here is we have to determine which finger you're going to wear your thimble on. Traditionally, we use the longest middle finger. Orthopedically speaking, this is your best choice. Occasionally, people will have an issue with this finger and need to use their index finger. And there are a few select people out there that still use their thumb for hand quilting. We never recommend fitting the last two fingers. They are just too weak and they don't work independently on their own. See how it makes other fingers to wiggle? So I'm going to show you how to measure on this finger, and then you can decide which finger you're going to use. The very first step is to determine the middle of the knuckle. And we're talking about the knuckle that is closest to the end of the finger here. Now, if you look at the wrinkles across the back of that knuckle, which of course I have lots of them, if you bend your fingers, your wrinkles kind of disappear. So keep your hand flat and open. All my little wrinkles here, don't we all have them? But I have one very deep, distinct wrinkle, and that's the middle of my joint. So that's going to be my starting point to measure with. Now I know everybody's fingers can look a little different and you may have a hard time figuring out which one is actually the middle wrinkle. So one of the other methods that you can use is to turn your hand over and use a piece of string to wrap in that biggest crease right there. Wrap it around, turn your hand over, and it's now showing you the middle of your joint. And as you can see, this string is actually in my deepest wrinkle. So that's going to be my starting measuring point. If you're using the string, you're going to want to mark your finger right where the string is with a little dot. See my dot? That's my starting measuring point. Then you're going to grab your ruler, and you want the millimeter side, because millimeters measure small distances more precisely, and we need a very precise measurement here. So I'm going to measure from my little dot to my cuticle, right where the skin ends at my nail. So in this particular instance, you can see that I am 11 millimeters. and don't round off. If it's a 1/2 millimeter, go ahead and include that 1/2 millimeter. Now, to determine the midpoint mathematically between this spot and that spot, I just take my 11 millimeters and divide by 2. That would be 5.5. So now I want to remeasure 2 5.5 millimeters, and we're going to put another little mark on my finger right at that point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5, and I want to try and land my marker literally between those 2 millimeter markers. There we go. So now I have 2 dots, but we're only going to pay attention to the middle dot here. That is the midpoint between the cuticle and the middle of my joint. To that end, we're now going to borrow ring sizers. And you just want to start with a large ring sizer and slide it onto your finger. If the ring sizer can go past the mark you made on your finger, then it's too big and you need to go to the next smaller one. So here's the next smaller one. It still easily goes past that mark. So we're just going to keep going smaller and smaller until I find a ring sizer that no matter how hard I push, it will stop right on that mark that I made on my finger. So it's definitely getting snugger, but I was able to push it past the mark. So we're going to keep going smaller. That one stopped on the mark, but if I push really hard, I can still get it past the mark, so that's still too big. Next size down. No matter how hard I push, it stops right on that dot that I made. Push really, really hard, uncomfortably so, and it won't go anywhere. So that is the correct ring sizer. You'll know because if I go down even one more size, I can't get it to the mark I made on my finger. So we know that's too small. So the ring sizer that I've chosen is a 4.5. So for your proper Roxanne Thimble size, just add a 1 to that number. So I would order a size 5.5 Roxanne Thimble. Then you just have choices of types of metals. The Roxanne Thimble actually comes in 4 types of metals. There's polished bronze and solid sterling silver, and then behind those 2 is silver plated and gold plated. They all do fit slightly differently. Solid sterling silver tends to feel the loosest and lightest just because of the physics of the metal. Solid sterling silver is very conductive to heat and cold, so it warms up to your body temperature instantaneously when you put it on, and the metals actually expand and contract minutely while you're wearing it, giving an overall more comfortable feel. The silver plated is the next size down. Gold will fit slightly snugger over the silver plated just because of the way plating works. Gold plating plates slightly thicker, so it has about a 1/16 of a millimeter tighter feeling. Doesn't sound like much, but it can be a huge difference in the fit for someone. And then there's the bronze. Polished bronze is basically our hypoallergenic metal. It's the same material that we make statues out of to sit in weather for hundreds of years. Very, very durable, but it is the tightest fitting of the Roxanne Thimbles. So if you find that you've ordered a size 4, and in silver plate it's too big, and the gold plate isn't quite snug enough, the bronze might make it for you, especially if the 3.5 just was too tight and you couldn't even get it on your finger. You can always call us, and exchanges are simple, so I wouldn't be concerned with that. Your Roxanne Thimble is definitely worth the trouble to get measured for. It will last you a lifetime. It will increase your speed and comfort level during hand quilting, and it's just flat out gorgeous. So happy stitching!